former police officer Miles Bryant found guilty of murdering a 16-year-old girl. Her name, Susana Morales. Here she is. A jury just returned that verdict in Gwinnett County. I'm Alan Devlin.
And I'm Savannah Louie. Susana's sister gave an emotional plea tonight shortly after that verdict was read.
Nothing will ever bring her back. To this day, I still hope that I'll see her again.
Atlanta News First, Chelsea Beimfohr was in the courtroom tonight. So, Chelsea, how long will Bryant, now a convicted murderer, actually spend behind bars?
Well, a Gwinnett County judge sentenced Bryant to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the punishment that she felt was appropriate after that jury convicted him of killing an innocent teenager.
Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, found the defendant guilty.
Former Doraville police officer Miles Bryant found guilty Wednesday in the murder of 16-year-old Susana Morales. Her family and Judge Tamala Adkins emotional after the verdict was reached.
I just hope that after today, you and your family can find some peace.
Morales vanished in July of 2022. During the week-and-a-half-long trial, prosecutors said Bryant kidnapped, attempted to rape, and killed her, then dumped her body in the woods and lied about his department-issued firearm being stolen. The jury convicted Bryant on all counts except attempted rape.
I'm glad that justice was done and that Susana's family can have some peace.
During closing statements Wednesday, the defense argued that Morales could have died from a drug overdose since the medical examiner never determined her official cause of death. But the jury didn't buy it. Morales' mother and sisters thanked them, hugged investigators, and explained to the court the eternal pain and trauma Bryant caused their family.
Nothing will ever bring her back. To this day, I still hope that I'll see her again.
As the judge sentenced Bryant to life in prison without the possibility of parole, he briefly addressed the courtroom, saying only,
I just want to apologize to everybody and to the victim's family.
Now, Bryant's defense attorney spoke with reporters tonight and says she does plan to file a motion for a new trial. When asked why her client apologized, she said, well, he was in the woods with the body. He knew where the body was and didn't tell anybody, but maintains that he did not kill Susana Morales. Reporting live in Gwinnett County, Chelsea Beimfohr, Atlanta News First.